This is a tutorial for BOA 301. Our focus for today is to solve single-step percent problems, as well as in context with word problems that you're going to see single-step percent problems. Our extension skill is going to be doing two-step or three-step problems, where you can have percentage, tax added, percentage off, and computing with an average. I'm going to focus on some geometry problems, though, as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is when you see a percentage problem, how you can change that from words in English into a math symbol, into an equation. Here I see what is 4% of 25. The word what suggests that we don't know what something is, and we're going to call that the variable. Whenever we see the word what, we're going to call that x. So I'm going to place an x here right underneath that. Now the word is just means equals, right? Like if I said 4 plus 3 is 7, I can replace that word is with an equal sign. So is just means equals. And then this 4%, well, we want to convert percentages to decimals. So change the percent to a decimal, and we do that, in this case 4%. We look at the number 4 and we move the decimal, it's after the 4, 2 spots to the left, which makes that 0.04 now. The word of means to multiply. So this is something you really have to make sure you understand. Each one of these. Of means to multiply and is means equals. I think the easier one out of these is that what is just a variable, and percentages, you know that you're supposed to change those into a decimal already. So if we're going to finish this off, we have the equation x equals 0.04. Of means to multiply, and then we have the number 25. So in my calculator, I'm literally going to just type in 0.04 times 25, which means now that I get x equals 1. So the number 1 is 4% of 25. Okay? All right, let's try another problem again, and then you're going to do one on your own. Here I see what is 35% of 80. Remember, what, this word means x, so I'm going to replace that with an x. Is means equals. This 35%, I'm going to change that to a decimal. So I change that 35% by moving the decimal here 2 spots to the left, and I'm left with 0.35. The word of means to multiply, and then the number 80. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in 0.35 times 80. So I'm going to type in 0.35 multiplied by 80, and I get 28. So x is 28. In other words, 28 is 35% of 80. Okay, I'd like you to try this number 2 question here on your own, so pause the video and try number 2. And then we'll check that in when you check in your notes. Let's move on to the next level question. Okay, this one says solve the equation for x when x plus 1/2 is equal to 2 1/3. We're going to leave our answer as an improper fraction. An improper fraction has a bigger number over a smaller number. Okay? And that's all that an improper fraction is. So let's solve. We have x plus 1/2 equaling 2 1/3. Now I know if I want to isolate x, I only have to subtract 1/2 on both sides. So now I'm left with x equaling 2 1/3 minus 1/2. Now for some of us, it's difficult to put this into our calculator, so I'm going to show you how to do this without needing to necessarily use your calculator at first. But we need to be able to input this 2 1/3 into our calculator. Now 2 1/3 is the same as 7/3. We talked about this way back in a previous skill in NCP 201, but I'm going to just repeat this with you now. 2 1/3 is the same as 7/3 because I multiply 2 times 3 to get 6, and then I add the 1 on top to get 7/3. Okay, that's where this number is coming from. So now I have the expression 7/3 minus 1/2. Now we know we need a common denominator to subtract fractions. You could just directly put this into your calculator. I'm going to do it both ways with you guys. But we could also find a common denominator to simplify these fractions. So we have a common denominator of 6. So I want to change 7/3 into something over 6. Well, to do that, I'd have to multiply by 2 on the top and on the bottom. So 7/3 is equivalent to 14/6, and 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6, because here I'd have to multiply by 3 over 3. So now I can just do this without a calculator because I can do 14 minus 3 in my head, and that gives me 11. 6 over 6 is still just the 6 because you have to make sure you have the same denominator. So you don't subtract 6 minus 6. So we have an answer of 11/6. That's an improper fraction because we have a big number on top over a smaller number, and so we call that an improper fraction. Now, using your calculator, you could do the same thing. So let's say I already would have to know, though, that 2 1/3 is 7/3. So if I plug this into my calculator, I'm going to put parentheses, then 7 divided by 3 minus 1 divided by 2, the 1/2. Now I'm going to get a decimal here, and the last thing I need to do is change this into a fraction by hitting math, then enter, enter. So I get the same answer, 11/6. I could do that by hand and with the help of my calculator, or just using my calculator. Please pause the video now and try number 4 on your own. All right, next up is number 5 here. It says solve the equation for x and round your answer to the nearest tenth. So we have 2.1x equaling 14.3. Now I know that if I want to get x alone, this is 2.1 multiplied by x. When I don't see a symbol in between, that means it's implied that I'm multiplying. So to undo multiplication, we want to divide. So we're going to divide by 2.1 on both sides. So we're left with just x because these will cancel out. So now all I have left to do is in my calculator type in 14.3 divided by 2.1. And my answer is 6.80952 and some other decimal places. But this one says to round your answer to the nearest tenth. Now the tenths place is the place right after the decimal, so here. So what I would look to do is look 1 to the right. If this number is bigger than 5, I round up. If it's smaller than 5, which it is, I keep this number the same. So my answer is 6.8. Please try now problem 6 and pause the video. Okay, now our next level question here is a 2-step problem because we're going to find a percent question and it's relating to a word problem, and then we're going to have to do another step. So here it says shoes are on sale for 30% off. What is the sale price if the original price is 65? Now what we can do here is take 65 and find what is 30% of that. So I'm asking myself the question, what is 30% of 65? Okay. So let's convert that. This is now just the skill that we practiced at first. What means x? Is means equals. 30% is going to change into a decimal by moving that decimal spot 2 spots over, so 0.30. Remember, 0.30 is the same as just 0.3 also, so it doesn't matter how you want to write that. The word of means to multiply, and then we have 65. So in my calculator, I'm typing in 0.30 times 65. So 0.30 times 65 gives me the number 19.5. Now, a lot of times, students will leave this as their final answer, $19.50. However, it asks, what is the sale price, right? The sale price is not this number here. This is how much we reduce it. This is the discount. So the actual price of the shoes will be $65 minus $19.50. So you might have to do an extra step here. Instead of stopping here at finding what the discount is, they'll ask you for the actual price. Okay, so this is why it's a 2-step problem. Okay, so we take 65 minus 1950. Oops. And we want to interpret this as $45.50. So we should answer this in a sentence. So the sale price is $45.50. Okay, since that was 2 steps, I'd recommend pausing here and maybe replaying something if something didn't quite make sense, but you're going to try number 8 on your own and then check in with me when you turn in your notes. Let's go to the next problem. Here's another extension problem. It's not a percentage problem. It's actually more of a geometry problem. It says a square has a side of 4x plus 6. Find the value of x if the perimeter is 48. So I'm going to draw a square. Remember, We know that the square should have all sides the same and all angles the same. So I'm going to draw an accurate sketch of this square. And I'm going to label one of the sides as 4x plus 6. Well, I know that if all of the sides are the same in a square, then I can label all of these as 4x plus 6. So if I were to add all of these up, I would end up with a perimeter. Perimeter just goes all the way around. You add up this side, plus this side, plus this side, and this side. So if I were to add up all of these parts, I have the term 4x plus 6 repeated 4 times. And I know that the whole perimeter is supposed to equal 48. So this is the equation that I set up. All of the sides put together add up to the perimeter. This is a really important geometry concept. And from here, all we need to do is just simplify our like terms. Remember how we talked about like terms before? We're going to take 4x and add up all of these together. 4x plus 4x plus 4x plus 4x gives me 16x. Then I do the same thing with the 6. So I have 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, which gives me 24. And now I have a two-step equation that we're able to solve here. If you want to isolate the x, the first thing you're going to do is subtract the 24. So we have 16x equals 24. And now to get x alone, we're going to divide out the 16. Now when I plug that into my calculator, 24 divided by 16, I don't get a whole number. I actually get 1.5. I want to change that into a fraction. So I can write my answer two different ways, as 1.5 or 3 halves. So x is 1.5 or 3 halves. Either of those answers would be acceptable. Okay, so you just did a geometry problem and dealing with perimeter. I think you should be ready now for this question here. It's just slightly different. I'm going to help you set it up. This is talking about a rectangle. Remember, a rectangle has opposite sides the same, and all of the angles are the same. So we can draw a little box there to represent each of those being 90 degrees. And this one says it has a length of 3x and a width of x plus 2. We're going to find the value of x if we know that the perimeter, if we add up all of the parts, equals 28. So if this is 3x here, I also know that this side is 3x. If this side is x plus 2, the opposite side has to be the same, and it's also x plus 2. Now I'm going to add up each part. So I take this length, which is 3x, and I add to that this length here, which is x plus 2. And then I go around and I do the same thing. So I'm going to add another 3x and another x plus 2. And from here, I'm going to simplify my like terms, but I want to set it equal to the perimeter. And in this case, it says that the perimeter is 28. So we're going to set it equal to 28. And now I want you to solve this equation from here. All right, that's the end of the lesson. Go ahead and finish all of those U-tries and get your work checked in with me. Good job.